Hello and welcome. Are you hanging out with me today? Good. Very good. I thought maybe you might like to hang out with me for a little bit and just decompress and kind of relax. We are drinking oat milk coffee. And I've got a This says in Britain only, 6,000 books were published in the first decade of the 18th century. So 6,000, and then all of a sudden you get 56,000. And then more than 1 million new publications appeared in German over the course of the 1700s. So pretty much Europe was going nuts. They loved reading. Okay, where readers had once read intensively, so maybe they might have had a couple of books and they would read and reread those same books. Now you had extensive reading. So people read everything: newspapers, journals, history, philosophy, science, literature, books, pamphlets. To me, this sounds like how we read today. But is that true? Let's keep reading, because in my mind I'm like, well, that's us right now. This says that the world of print is orderly, it's logical, and it's rational. So when you have books, knowledge is categorized and structured in these pieces that you can follow with your mind and you can integrate into a system of understanding. This says that the growth of print culture in the 18th century is associated with a growing prestige of reason, hostility to superstition, the birth of capitalism, and the rapid development of science. Other historians have linked the explosion of literacy to the Enlightenment, the birth of human rights, the arrival of democracy, and even the beginnings of the Industrial Revolution. I think that is very true. So far, so good, because I know that the Enlightenment, in part, was facilitated by the insane amount of printing of essays, and that facilitated a lot of discussion about human rights and equality. Some of that came from, at the time, the Americas were being colonized, right? And so there was a lot of writing and a lot of encountering of other cultures, native cultures. Anyway, writing being circulated in Europe, and people reading that writing. Still, I think all that sounds like today. Like, we can read books from all over. We have books in translation, and yeah, we have all kinds of things. However, not so fast. This says that books, having exploded in popularity for like the past 300 years, are now dying. This says that numerous studies show that reading is in free fall. Okay, so this says in America that reading for pleasure has fallen by 40% in the last 20 years. That's a lot. In the UK, more than a third of adults say that they have given up reading. I wonder what it means for them to have given up reading, because how do you just give up reading? I don't understand that. They just don't do it anymore. The National Literacy Trust reports a shocking and dispiriting falls in children's reading, which is now at its lowest level on record. I will be honest, I do see a lot of iPad kids, and I mean a lot. And even children that I know personally in my life, unfortunately. I kind of watched a lot of kids that I know become iPad kids, and I'd be like, you can't parent other people's children, but it would hurt my soul to see kids on their iPad like every meal. Most remarkably, in late 2024, the OECD, I don't know what that is, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's an international organization that works to build better policies, so they measure skills in people. Okay, so they measured skills. They published a report which found that literacy levels were declining or stagnating in most developed countries. Once upon a time, a social scientist confronted with statistics like these might have guessed the cause was a societal crisis like a war or the collapse of the education system. What happened, though, was the smartphone, which was widely adopted in developing countries or developed countries in the mid-2010s. He says that those years will be remembered as a watershed in human history. I definitely agree that those years are critical for a lot of things. I think people who lived through that know very acutely, which is most people on planet Earth lived through that shift to the smartphone and that shift through social media, and have lived through the ickiness of it. So I think we know, we have cultural knowledge about this. So he says that the average person now spends 7 hours a day staring at a screen. For Gen Z, the figure is 9 hours. Now, I take issue with that deeply. Because what does that mean, staring at a screen? For example, my screen time is insanely high, but it's because I put on Spotify and then I leave it. Or I put on a YouTube playlist and then I leave it. I'm not sitting there staring at YouTube. I'm listening to music, or like bird sounds, or rain sounds, or the sound of a fireplace. So my dopamine is not being hijacked for 7 hours a day, but my screen time might say, oh my gosh, you're, 6 hours a day on YouTube. The times found on average, modern students are destined to spend 25 years of their waking lives scrolling on screens. 25 years of scrolling. Good God. God, I hope that's not true. Okay. He says that if the reading revolution represented the greatest transfer of knowledge to ordinary men and women in history, the screen revolution represents the greatest theft of knowledge from ordinary people in history. Oh, this is interesting. A study of English literature students at American universities found they were unable to understand the first paragraph of Charles Dickens' novel Bleak House. Is that real? No way. I wonder, this is data, but also who who's not understanding the first part of Bleak House? It's written in English. I don't know. I didn't meet anyone in college who I would think would not be able to understand basic writing. But somehow these people have been represented in data, so they must be somewhere. That's nuts. This is saying that we are declining in our literacy, we're declining in writing. He is also bringing the point about oral societies. He is saying that reading and writing rationalizes thought. It makes it rational, and you can't appeal as much to those forms. In an oral, pre-literate oral society, so podcast culture, videos, right? Me talking to you. In this pre-literate oral-based society, they often strike visitors from literate countries as remarkably mystical, emotional, and antagonistic in their discourse and thinking. That immediately strikes me as BS. Absolute BS. We understand that many cultures in America, early America, so the first Americans, they had highly, what we might consider egalitarian societies. They were warring just like everyone else, but they had incredibly complex but holistic systems of quote-unquote governance, and they were not writing things down, and yet they were living by principles that we would associate with Western Enlightenment thinking, rationalist Enlightenment thinking. Similarly, we have books and we have a Western culture that contains you can read it, evangelicalism, like you can read theology, you can see a system of fanatical, monotheistic belief structures that are highly emotional. They're based on judgment. They put people in these mythical categories of good and bad and sinner, and that bothers me, deeply bothers me. You can have a culture that values reading and writing and uses those to horrible, detrimental aims. We have propaganda, so you can have many habits of thought manipulation that are not oral. You can have propaganda in the form of cartoons, videos, books, all kinds of things. He argues that people are kind of popular promoters of irrationality. So he's saying if you wrote down all these conspiracy theories, they would seem absurd. On the screen, they are pervasive to people, but if you wrote them down, they wouldn't convince anyone. That's BS. Having explored the world of small press publishing, oh man, also, being from Texas, you can buy a book and read a book that affirms your belief system. And in fact, there are many small press publishers that publish radical right, hateful propaganda, conspiracy theory, and they are read by people who they believe in that. And they have a whole ecosystem of rationality and thought that upholds conspiracy. So that argument in here is bunk to me. That is absolutely bunk. I think as a whole, the glorification of reading and writing is kind of a morally pure act. We understand it's good for the brain. Oh yeah, it's great for the brain. It does help thinking. It exposes you to new ideas. But it cannot dog on pre-literate societies. That doesn't make any sense to me. And I think you have to look at screen time as more specific than just, oh, it's on a screen. And I know that there's a difference between long-form media and short-form. The top comment is one that I really like. And she says something is kind of nagging at her, and she's saying that democratization of information that reading and print started is not killed by the internet or smartphones. That is the opposite. So she's saying that Gen Z actually has the ability to seek out a lot of information that people did not have access to a generation or two ago. She also brings up the very good point that younger people, Gen Z, who are scrolling and doing all this stuff, are incredibly savvy with tech, and they can see AI a mile away. If you ever go on Facebook, it is full of people who may have been able to read Charles Dickens' Bleak House and understand it, but they do not understand that a video of a human turning into a zebra is fake. They believe the photo of a bird who is shaped like a cupcake and has sprinkles on its head. They believe that that is real, and the comments say, God bless. God's creations are truly a wonder. Heart, smiley face. Okay, you can keep your Bleak House. You can keep the ability to read Charles Dickens if you do not know that a bird shaped like a pizza is fake. We have a problem. And you know what? It's overwhelming on Facebook. It's overwhelming. Younger people can spot a scam from a mile away. They get a voicemail and they know it's a robot. Older people who have been reading books they'll be signing a check. They'll say, sure, scammers, here's, $300. So, in addition, there's an explosion of blog culture, younger people having better avenues to express themselves and put their thoughts out in the world. So I think the goal, she's saying, is to come up with meaningful ways to support critical thinking within the technology and facilitated by the technology. I completely agree. I think, like a lot of things, there's a gray area. I do think that there has always been garbage, like a lot of garbage, and if people were reading books once upon a time, we've always read garbage books, like books that don't lay out like systems of logical thought. This article mentions the critique of pure reason, and I'm sorry, I don't believe that in that boom of literacy that they're reading that kind of literature. I think it's always been a specialized kind of person who wants to read that kind of literature will read it, and everyone else is reading popular stuff. And that's how it's been. And one of my favorite things is to find a vintage book, a very old book that's just garbage, and to know that like this book was not ever very successful and was just like somebody just bought it, read it, and tossed it, and it's lasted this long. But it's like most books published ever of all time they don't last till today because they're not considered culturally significant or important. Something that I think is unfortunate is that for many people, subjects are encountered in a vacuum. So why would you study anything? Because it has no relation to life, and our education system is so messed up. I really like studying because it's how I encounter me and the universe and uncover life as it's occurring. And one of the things I really like I think this dude is like the grandfather of self-study. If you love to learn for the sake of learning and you're just alive as a thinking being, Montaigne is the guy. This lives at the top of my shelf. This is the complete essays by Michel de Montaigne. This guy was alive in the world as a thinking being. This introduction to him is very good. It says that he is a bridge linking the thoughts of pagan antiquity and of Christian antiquity with our own, colorful, practical, and direct, and never intentionally obscure. He sets before us his modestly named essays, his attempts at sounding himself in the nature and duties of man so as to discover a sane and humane way of living. So he was unique because instead of laying down like a treatise, a kind of broad scale theory of life and living, he lived through learning and writing. He found meaning through exploring over time. He's quite funny, he's very wise. He says he writes about himself but is no egocentric and is never a bore. He treats the deepest subjects in the least pompous of manners, and in a style often marked by dry humor. His writings are vibrant with challenge. They are free from jargon and unnecessary technicalities. So this guy reads widely. He reads widely, but he doesn't. He takes what he needs from everything that he reads and humanizes it and brings it into the world of the living. It doesn't stay sterile. He knew that most certainties, quote unquote, are opinions. This is the kind of balanced, creative, open, he's very open. This is the kind of psyche that can kind of see in what is already there, take from it, and then make new meaning. Everything is kind of related to himself, so he is sometimes credited as inventing the essay genre because he's writing about really himself and kind of exploring through essays, which is one of the most satisfying ways to explore outside of academia. So this guy is what's important to know. What's important to know about Montaigne is that he is writing about himself by writing about the world in a reflective, kind of interesting way. This says the way that he writes sometimes makes it hard because nothing's organized. This dude was just living and writing. I love it. He is just alive. He's not a permanent student in an institution, but he is a permanent kind of student and enjoyer of life. He says that he has essays of himself by himself, which to me is the self-study route. Is you're making essays about yourself in the world by yourself and doing that. Now, that is the ultimate joy. This article bothers me because it upholds a kind of institutional view of learning, an institutional metrics of IQ measurement, literacy measurement. It does not take into account how Gen Z is highly media literate, more media literate than any other generation to exist ever. It does not take into account many areas of the gray, and it suggests a marker of intelligence as going off to university and being able to comprehend and read the first page of Bleak House. So, understanding that the argument is complicated, I think it ignores the wild creative potential that we are capable of, and we have access now more than ever. We have access to the world of ideas and the means of self-expression. So, Gen Z might be spending a lot of time on screens, but what are the creative ways to take information you learn and synthesize? I didn't see any statistics about writing. Like, maybe it would help to look at output. Or is Gen Z being creative? Are they making videos? Are they posting stories? Are they posting role plays? Are they blogging? Are they crafting creative critical essays? I see a lot of young people making essay videos, doing research, being highly politically literate, knowledgeable, making content, making new products in like digital marketplaces, blah blah blah. I see an entirely new world of scholarship that has opened up to your average person in a way that sometimes men like Montaigne, they had means, and so they didn't have to hard labor, and they got to think all day every day. And if technology helps your average person like me be able to, around their job, be able to think and learn and make output, I want to live in that world versus the world where everyone is reading Charles Dickens. But I don't have the time and the access to completely play in the world of ideas. So I think self-study and learning is such a joy, and I am quite greedy. I can grab a podcast, a YouTube essay video, read a book. I like Khan Academy, if that's the name. I like to learn like basic math and stuff from there because I forgot a lot in school, just as a way to flex my brain, and I have notebooks for like everything I study and learn. Like this is very, to me, quite defeatist and negative. I think like when I was teaching, that was my goal, was to just show young people, hey, here are some tools you have to be creative. Here's free tools that you have to do animation. It was in animation. But we cannot, I don't think we can see younger people, and I'm young, even younger than me. We cannot see younger people as just helpless drones who are wasting away, rotting in front of a screen. You have to view them as in a highly literate relationship with the world, very literate with politics, with social issues, and they have a relationship with digital platforms, with technology, that a lot of the times older people don't. And it's about improving that relationship. And it's about saying, what do you want to do in this world? How do you want to manifest? And then giving them the encouragement to manifest using the literacy that they have, which I think is a high amount of literacy. I think to come at it from like a more positive doom of the world. I don't. And I think books, I love books. As someone who adores books, you cannot put them on a pedestal because you can read as many books as you want. What does that mean? What does that mean? Does that make you more rational than another person? Better than another person? Does that lead you to some outcome? I don't know. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. I don't know if that makes anyone more rational. Certainly, binging the news, I think, can make you more irrational. But I think we have to be careful with, like, glorifying certain activities as somehow, like, old world. And yeah, pre-literate societies were not, crazy and out of control and irrational loonies. That's not true. Goodness gracious, that's not true at all. It says that gradually Montaigne realized that by studying and questioning the greater and lesser authors in the light of his own opinions and experience, he was studying himself. This dude self-reflected hardcore. He self-reflected his way through life, and I think he left behind an incredible treasure trove of meaning as a result, and very excessively so. I think everyone can leave behind a treasure trove like this if they want to. That's what this person is doing on Substack. They're leaving behind a really interesting article, and whether I agree with all points or not, well, I read it and now I'm thinking. That's just the joy. That's all you can want. Are you ready to do some self-studying? This has inspired me. I want to read. I want to read and keep writing, That's all we can do, is truly, truly engage with the world around us as best we can. And yeah, read books, but also listen to podcasts. Oral traditions. Don't be scared of oral traditions. Don't be scared of podcasts.